Okay, so my project this summer was working on a maze project, also called AMP. And the goal was understanding human trust in machine systems. So just a little bit about myself. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm a rising senior at MIT. I am on the crew team. I'm majoring in aerospace engineering. And for future education, I start up again in September, graduate in May, and besides taking the GRE in September, I have no idea what I want to do afterwards. This is my family, just thought I'd add them. And Olaf, because Frozen's the best movie ever. So a little introduction to the problem. A lot of questions pretty much on day one, came through my mind when I was learning more about a tractor and what you do with the AI, is when do people ask for help from artificial intelligence? How often do they ask? Does the criticality change your level of trust? And how could we really maximize or minimize human trust levels in AI? So who even cares about humans when you can make super smart robots? Why do we need humans? Well, no matter how hard we try to make robots into humans, we can't. Like, humans will always be perfect. We can think, we can feel. And it might be worth it to have the human and robot look at it together instead of separate. So if you consider the human in making this robot, it'll work better than if you just have the robot by itself. So the problem statement we came up with is, can we maximize the level of trust between a person and a machine system by predetermining communication style based on their individual differences? So if we know what kind of communication they prefer, then we know how to talk to them in order to optimize performance. So different situations require different communication. So I will talk to my mom about what we're having for dinner differently than I would talk to my mentor about my project. So you have to know the situation, know the criticality, who you're talking to, what kind of information you have available. So the steps guiding my 10 weeks here have been a lot of research on previous work done with human machine systems and the trust levels. Choose an interface involving communication. Determine the baseline tests, create the interface, work on the individual differences assessment, and then start testing. And so for the research, there was a lot of research done on physical cooperation with robotic systems. So sending in a robot to check a building, and then do you believe it or not? And through my research, I kind of realized that there are two terms that I found in human-machine interaction. There's teaming, which is working together by allowing different teammates to do different tasks. So if you are flying an airplane, you can put autopilot, or if you're driving a car, you have cruise control, and that's when the system is actually doing the work for you. Versus transparency, which is just allowing the machine to offer advice and information to aid your effort. So that's something like a GPS, where the car is not taking you to the destination, but it is giving you a route to get to the best place. So through really the GPS idea, I decided to come up with a maze interface. And you have the option to ask for directions. You don't need to, but that's where I wanted to start, because that involves communication between an AI system and a human. So for our baseline test, we decided to test maximum versus minimum detail. So do you want lots of detail or just the facts? So if you are going through a maze and you're right here, you're coming up, you're really close, and you don't want to mess up, so you hit the space bar for help, you could get the first right, or either of the left turns will lead you to many dead ends, or the second right will eventually lead you to the goal. On the other hand, it could just say second right. So we are under the assumption that people will have a strong preference towards one or the other. And after each, we'd give a frustration and trust feedback and see how that relates to which preference. Like if they prefer maximum, they might say when they get minimum that they don't trust it, that it wasn't clear, and they were very frustrated. And this is the interface. So the player sees this first-person view, kind of like you're going through a corn maze. They use the mouse as their eyes, and then the arrow keys move with their local axis. The guide, which is me and Lisa, were able to see a bird's eye view where they are, which way they're facing, and where they are on the maze. And we coordinate it with a PowerPoint that has all of these recordings. So instead of actually making an AI system, because I'm only here for 10 weeks, I decided to do it Wizard of Oz style, where they think it's an AI, but really I'm watching where they are, and when they hit the space bar and ask for help, I press on one of the recordings, and it'll play the maximum or minimum second right, keep going, etc. And then the goal is to, with Lisa, we were working on coming up with these individual differences bins. So you can relate your individual difference to your communication style preference. We have these 3 main categories. So either you're a maximum or a minimum. You want lots of details or just the facts. Then there's strategic versus tactical, where strategic is looking at the whole picture and tactical is more what's next. And then empirical versus analytical is more experience, observation, versus analytical, which is knowledge or assumed facts. So after they go through this maze, we'd give them the individual assessment. We'd find out which one they are. For example, I am minimum tactical analytical. And then we have the conclusion that you can work with any combination of the 6 except the exact opposite. So my opposite would be maximum strategic empirical, which just so happens to be Lisa, which is interesting. It's been an interesting summer, but we were able to make it work. But for an AI, instead of having the AI do that, if we know going into your minimum tactical analytical, then the AI can meet you there and avoid the maximum strategic empirical. And Myers-Briggs is one way that people are binned. So if you are like an INFJ, if you haven't taken Myers-Briggs, it's just 4 letters, and each of them stand for a different kind of personality you have. So you can be binned as like an INFJ, and you don't usually, if you're conversing with someone on the opposite side of you, you have to speak in a very particular way. So maybe if you knew someone's an INFJ, you talk to them accordingly. But that's just one way that people are binned. Lisa's going to look into kind of relating that to your communication style preference. But I'm a ISTP. It's a really cool website. It's 16personalities.com if you've ever done it. It's really fun. So the actual testing, we received approval on August 2nd. So I didn't have so I had 3 days to test, but I was still able to get 13 test subjects, which was really good because they had to come here and set up in the team room and run through it. It took about 30 minutes, and I couldn't use any of you, which would have been easy. But our main conclusion is that people don't ask for help. Someone even called it cheating. So even though there was no takeaway from asking for help from someone who knows where you are. So if you can see by the count, this is how many people. 10 people didn't ask at all. 8 people asked 1 or 2 times, and then above that is just a handful of people. It says 18. It's not. Everyone goes through 2 mazes. So people who asked for help also took longer. So what I think I would see if we had more time is that there's some sort of threshold where once you pass it, you ask for help. So with help, averaged about almost 6 minutes, and without help, averaged about 2.5 minutes. But the average first time you asked for help was not until 3 minutes and 11 seconds. So my assumption would be if we kept testing, we would find that around 3 minutes is when you ask for help. And then, so I'd need more data to see a trend. I did a lot of other graphs, but 13 people is pretty small, so there's no other clear trends. For future testing, so this maze is easy to adjust. Other things you could test is criticality. So if you have a time critical situation, like a timer, maybe they'll use it more or they'll use it less. If it's safety, like if you bump into the walls, you reset, maybe they'll use it more. Or mission, maybe collect all the keys. Same thing with guide, if it's an actual artificial intelligence versus Wizard of Oz versus just talking to a human. And then, or text, like it pops up as a text, or maybe an arrow pointing in the direction, or audio like we did, and then detail level we looked at. And you take each of these and you relate them to your individual difference. So ideally we can place people in these bins and know, okay, this person, given this individual difference, wants or will ask most in like time, with AI, with text, minimum detail. And then another side project I had this summer was coming up with this automatic maze. So using Unity, I kind of wanted to make it so that we don't have to be there. We don't need 3 people to test it. You don't have to be at this location. I can just send it to you and you can do it. And that's what you do is you go through the maze, and when you need help, you land on this block and you hit the space bar. And when you hit it once, it'll tell you which direction. So it'll tell you go down the pink path or go down the orange path. That was just to avoid turn left, turn right, because it can be annoying depending on which way you're facing. And then if you, in the block, you're like, okay, but how much time has passed? And how many turns have I made? And information on other turns, and hit it again, and motivational message. So there's a way, instead of finding your individual difference and going in here and guessing, you could say, okay, well, this person always hit it 3 times. So they prefer knowing more information. They're probably more of a maximum detail kind of person. So that's, I kind of have a pretty good handle on that, but that was kind of just a side project. So I just want to thank everyone. This has been a really great summer. I wanted to thank Danette for the opportunity, and Lisa for being an amazing mentor, and Sarah and Payton for being great guinea pigs. I don't even know how many mazes I made you do, but it was a lot. And Jamie and Chase, who aren't here anymore, but their moral support and enthusiasm, and then anyone else who did any of my mazes. So that's my email at school. If anyone ever comes across cool papers relating to the topics or wants to reopen this, you should email me. Yeah, we are right now, so because I ended testing yesterday afternoon and I haven't had time to look into the data, but we're not sure if we'll find a trend with your Myers-Briggs and your actual preference. So we haven't been able to find an actual bin yet. So that's really what we're doing. We're saying people know what they want, and then we give them this, and we're hoping to find the bin that works. It might not be perfect, but the goal is to have literally place you in a bin and you want that. So, but there will always be people that think they want something and their bin says otherwise. So yeah, that would be a really good long-term goal if I was here for another few weeks. We did mark where they asked. Okay. So maybe, I think if I were to look at that, we'd probably see some trends. It was kind of funny being on the other side, watching people go back and forth to the same dead ends. Yeah. And you do want to interject. You do want to be like, stop, because people would go. There was one person who went 10 minutes through the maze before asking for help. And this maze is a maze that you can do in a minute if you do it perfectly. So she went everywhere 10 times before she asked for help. So that tells a lot about her personality. We actually did a testing maze where we had the option to ask us for help, but nobody asked. I think one person asked, am I close? And that's it. So it seems like people, I mean, it was a small sample size, but I thought hitting the space bar was really easier than asking a question. But nobody did. I literally am giving them the answers and they don't want them. It's perplexing, but